I want to talk about a video that was leaked recently that has sent shockwaves through open source intelligence Twitter, through the Ukrainian community, through anybody monitoring the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So over the weekend and early in the week, somewhere around there, a few days ago, a video was posted of a Ukrainian soldier, and I can't show you guys the video, but I can show you guys the picture from the video of this Ukrainian soldier standing here in this trench after being captured by the Russians, and he's smoking a cigarette, the cigarette you see in his mouth. Now, after smoking the cigarette, he says Slava Ukraini before the Russians then proceed to execute him, and they just riddle him full of bullets. They shoot him in the head, and they riddle his entire body, toe to chest with bullets. They execute him for daring to say Slava Ukraini once in Russian captivity. This video was then posted online, and it has now caused massive backlash from Ukraine. The Ukrainian community is looking at this in outrage, saying this guy was a POW. He had certain rights which were violated. This is obviously a war crime. This is obviously a violation of the Geneva Convention. But on top of that, besides the fact, by the way, we're not going to be watching this video on stream. The video is clearly gore. And if you want to watch it, you can go to my original tweet. And the second tweet that in my tweet thread is the video. Massive content warning. Obviously, there's some pretty... It's really hard to watch, if I'm being honest. But the second thing that happened, besides just the outrage at the fact that this was just such a horrific tragedy, is that this guy kind of became an overnight hero, where people saw how he was smoking in front of the invading army. He was captured, but he was resilient, and he died with dignity. He didn't get on his knees and beg. He knew what was going to happen. And so he simply gave an ending message of, I stand with my country, before getting killed. And so he has now become kind of an icon in the Ukrainian sphere. And so I wanted to play a quick CNN segment where they talk briefly about this. And I want to move on a bit from this to a Marjorie Taylor Greene segment to show you, while this was making shockwaves in the Ukrainian community, this horrific tragedy, what Marjorie Taylor Greene and other commentators were doing while Ukraine was dying for their freedom. Oops.
In the east of Ukraine.
Showing Zelensky also reacted to a disturbing video released on social media showing an unarmed Ukrainian soldier being executed. He says the video shows Russia's attitude towards prisoners of war, saying they do not have any laws, nor do they respect anything. CNN's Melissa Bell has more details now, but we have a warning. Some viewers may find the images they're about to see disturbing.
Glory to Ukraine were his last words. Timothy Shadura was his name. His courage and his silhouette made iconic overnight by his brutal execution. An officer from his brigade telling CNN that his death will not go unpunished.
Дуже боляче сприйняв таку варварську поведінку нашого ворога. Помста буде невідворотною. Так, Збройні сили України помстяться за смерть нашого товариша.
The fate of Bakhmut still in the balance.
So I just wanted to just show that quick portion. So the guy's name was Timothy Mykolaievich. I'm very bad at pronouncing names, but I really tried. And as people are posting like in chat right now, this guy has become like an overnight sensation in an image of Ukrainian resistance. I remember I talked to one Ukrainian person, and I think they got it off like an internet meme, because I think I vaguely remember hearing it somewhere else. But I was talking to them about the prospect of a world-ending event, the Russians using nuclear weapons on Ukraine, and the possibility of it expanding from that, and whether they would be willing to accept a Russian peace proposal in order to avoid an outcome that could see the world explode, yet could see Ukraine irradiated and turned into a wasteland. And they looked at me and they said that Ukraine will have its borders, even if it's the last borders humanity ever draws. And I was like, damn. And it really sat with me, because it really got to me the point home that for Ukrainians, this is a struggle of survival. This is a struggle against a war of annihilation, and they would rather take this fight to the bitter end, no matter what that is, towards victory being the most likely goal, rather than accepting Russian occupation. I hear many of them say to me that to accept Russian annexation of territory is to accept their neighbors getting executed. And this video is just one example of it. See, when you look at this video, this is just one of a cavalcade of Russian war crimes, many of which have been recorded by the perpetrators themselves. See, the people who did this specific execution, recorded it themselves. This isn't like some surveillance footage of this crime. If you see most criminals, like of somebody robbing a store, robbing a bank, they're not filming themselves the whole time they go and commit that crime. Most, muggers and drug dealers and bank robbers don't live stream them committing their crimes or take pictures because they don't want to get caught. But the Russians in Ukraine are so confident in their ability to enact horrific atrocities on the Ukrainian people with zero repercussions from their superiors that they are freely willing to record themselves executing civilians for merely saying 2 words, not even 2 particularly offensive words, but just saying 2 words that could be seen as a slight way of defiance towards their cause, and that's all it takes for them to execute them. And they recorded the whole thing and posted it online. They were proud of it. They were proud of it. And so for every video like this that they publicly post online, I tend to think about all the stuff we don't see. When I went to Bucha and I talked to people who were there during the occupation, I heard a lot of testimony that didn't come with photographs and didn't come with video, because a lot of babushkas don't have, camera phones that they could take out and record. Or if they do have camera phones, maybe they're too terrified to record what's going on, because if they do record what's going on, there's a possibility that the Russians see it, go over there and beat them or kill them for daring to record them committing their atrocities. So thankfully, a few Russians are stupid enough to record themselves, so we have documentation of these crimes, and we have documentation of the dignity that man died with as he was standing up for his country on the battlefield. What a unbelievably brave man. I could not imagine being as calm and as committed and as determined as he was when he died. I couldn't imagine looking at a bunch of people intent to kill me and just basically flipping them off in their face. I couldn't imagine doing it, and doing it so calm and so stoically as well. It's a trait that most human beings just don't have. They could never look death in the face and say, fuck you, which is essentially what this guy did. It's unbelievably heroic and brave. And so I saw some people saying on Twitter, talking about these art pieces and the kind of martyrdom that this guy has sadly entered, as this guy has become a Ukrainian martyr. I saw a few people saying, like, there's no reason we need to, like, idealize this guy. Like, what happened to him was a tragedy, but he didn't really do anything like that heroic. And I disagree on such a deep level. On such a deep level. Bravery is a trait that should be complimented. Bravery and doing what he did, looking death in the face and being able to say screw you, is something that is commendable. Not becoming subservient to the occupiers of your nation, I think, is commendable, and it takes immense courage, because many people would simply do everything in their power to beg and plead for their life to the people who are probably going to kill them no matter what. And so he accepted his situation, said screw you, and has now become a national symbol of resistance. What a brave man, unironically. This is the face of Ukrainian resistance. This is the kind of tenacity that strikes fear in the Kremlin, unironically. And this is when I talk about when people ask me, like, well, Dylan, do you really think Ukraine can win this? This is exactly what I think about. People have been undercutting and underestimating Ukraine since the start of this war. On the first day of this war, all the tweet threads, all the stuff we were seeing online was saying Ukraine's going to fall in like 24 hours. And all the people saying that they're going to fall within 24 hours, 72 hours, within a week, were also a lot of the same people who said that the war didn't have any chance of happening in the first place, like Catelyn Johnson, Scott Ritter, all these types of people, Jackson Hinkle, but then Infrared, but that did not come to pass. And that was because of Ukrainian resilience, the government staying in Kiev, not fleeing, keeping the government united and able to withstand the invasion, And due to the personal commitments of millions of Ukrainians like this guy, as much attention as Zelensky gets, and I do think he deserves credit for staying in the country and being the public face of Ukraine. I think he deserves immense credit for that. Without him and his experience in media, I do not think Ukraine would have gotten the amount of support that it has gotten. But at the end of the day, the main reason why Ukraine has been able to succeed isn't because of like one man like Zelensky or because of terrible Russian logistics. Like at the end of the day, if there was no resistance as the Russians walked into Kiev, they would have taken Kiev. The reason why Ukraine has sustained itself for so long is due to its people and the resistance and the tenacity and the just clawing and scratching they have done since this war has begun in defense of their homeland. And this is just one example of tens upon tens of thousands to hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of examples of Ukrainians resisting on every level and not accepting the occupation. So at the end of the day, as much credit as we give to these big public figures or these political parties or these generals, it is the backbone of the simple Ukrainian soldier and the Ukrainians who have stayed behind and continue to support the country. And of the diaspora who have sent money and tried to keep the country afloat. It is their efforts that has been the main contributor to Ukrainian success. It is because of men like this that Ukraine is still standing. Oh, and while like 3 days before this video was recorded, let's listen to what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say at CPAC as Ukrainians are fighting for their survival.
Committed to saying no money to Ukraine, and that country needs to find peace, not war.
Yo, do you think if America was invaded and China was like, I'm going to take Missouri, I'm going to take Florida, I'm going to take Tennessee, these are mine now, screw you. If you don't want war and suffering, just accept it. Do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene would say, you know, as Americans, we should accept peace? We should accept peace. No, she wouldn't. She would not at all. If these types of atrocities were going on in her own community, she would sound like the leader of the Taliban. She would be talking about strapping bombs on the chests of willing volunteers to run into the Chinese lines and blow themselves up. She would be leading like the kamikaze corps from a distance. She of course would never hurt herself or put herself in any danger, but she would be like the figurehead of the kamikaze corps of the United States Air Force. Yeah, Al Qaeda, exactly. Saw Georgia off.
And while I will look at a camera and directly tell Zelensky, you better leave your hands off of our sons and daughters because they're not dying over there.
So this is in reference to a clip that was going around that was just a complete lie, which suggested that Zelensky was asking for Joe Biden to send American troops to Ukraine to fight and die on the front lines. It's deceptively edited, and the full clip is Zelensky acknowledging that if Russia was to invade a NATO country, then the United States, by Article 5 obligation, which has been in place since 1949, so this is like around 80 years of U.S. foreign policy. This has been the cornerstone of American policy in Europe through the Cold War to today. If that was to happen, the United States would send its sons and daughters to fight and die. And even Zelensky even says, God forbid that happens, right? You couldn't have edited it in a more deceptive way. But of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene being Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is perfectly willing to lie and lie and lie in order to get the point across about how much she doesn't like Ukraine. Anyway, that's enough of that.